working with shapes in Photoshop. In Photoshop, we have 6 shape tools. Remember, these are the vector tools. So we have the rectangle tool, the rounded rectangle, the ellipse, the polygon, align tool, and the custom shape tool. When I create a shape, if I go to the rectangle tool and click and drag, I get obviously a shape, it's vector, and I get a shape layer. So the benefit of vector, remember, is that they will not lose their crisp appearance if they are resized or reshaped. And I can have multiple shapes on one layer. So if I go back over here and let's do the polygon tool. Now notice up here I have sides. So if you wonder, well, how can I make a triangle? Make a polygon with only 3 sides. There it is. And as I drag around, you can see I can do different dimensions. If I hold down my space bar, I've not let up on my mouse yet. I hold down my space bar, I can relocate this and continue to resize it. Shift will constrain it. So watch when I hold shift right there. It constrains it to horizontal, vertical directions. So I can have multiple shape layers, obviously. And I have some options when I do select one of these shape tools. One other note, the shape tool is automatically filled with the current foreground color. So notice my foreground color is black. It's going to fill the shapes with that. Let's turn this layer off for a moment and so you can see this a little better. Now when I go back to my shapes here, I do have an option. I have an option of what kind of shape I want to create. So I can by default leave it on shape, which is obviously the shape on a new or existing shape layer. That's what I've done. I can choose path, and when I do path, if I do the same thing here, let's move this down a little bit, hold shift to make another triangle here. You can see it moves by 45 degrees. I now made a path. So this is not a shape. I did not get a shape layer, but instead if I go to paths, see how I have a new path. So I can utilize my shape tools to create paths, making a new work path. The third thing I can do with my shapes is pixels. And this will rasterize it. And of course it's saying no to me right now because I'm on a shape layer. Let's go ahead and make a new image layer. Let's tuck this away. Hold my space bar to move it away. Hold the shift key to constrain it. And if it's something like this that I want, when I let up on my cursor now, I have an image layer. The shape layers are indicated by this bottom right corner, a little vector icon indicating this is a shape layer. This is an image layer. It's made up of pixels. If I zoom in close and look at the 2 edges of these, you'll notice that I'm going to get some jaggeds here. This one is drawing. It's drawing in Photoshop, so I see that there's pixels there. However, the quality of this one is going to stay very good because it's vector. The quality of this one will eventually get very jagged and not be as good because one is raster and one is vector. I can do really fun things with my shape layers here. So now what we're seeing is 2 vector shapes, a path, and my raster shape. I'm clicking on the rectangle here. So that's this top one. I can do some embellishments to the shape layers. Some features that I can apply would be things like a drop shadow. So if I go down to the FX for effects down here, I know it's cutting off, but I'm going to choose a drop shadow, which happens to be at the bottom of the list. I understand you can't see it, but if you look at yours, you'll be able to find that. So here's the drop shadow, and you can see how the drop shadow is occurring. I tend to like to drag out here and create my own. Let's increase the spread just a bit and the size, which will make it actually become a little bit more soft and blurred out. Okay, so here's the effect. Again, effects can be turned on and turned off, but I can apply that now to my rectangle, which is really fun. I can do other items such as the bevel and emboss. Again, it's falling off, but I can do some really cool things here. Now, because of it being black, sometimes the bevel and emboss and some of these different inner shadows are not going to show up, but it's certainly something that you can do. And you can apply filters. I could go and apply some of these really fun filters if I wanted to. All right, so you can play with that as well. So it's going to ask me to convert it to a smart object. I don't have to rasterize it. I can convert it to a smart object and then apply those. I'm going to cancel that. So you can do some fun things to the shapes. It's not just that you have a flat shape there. I also want to share with you the really cool things. It's kind of like the hidden treasure under the custom shape tool. So in the custom shape tool, when you click it, it looks like it's just some sort of weird amoeba type shape. However, when you go up to the options bar here at the top, you'll find a whole bunch of really fun, cool shapes. And you can actually use this little gear icon to look at all of these different libraries of shapes that Photoshop offers you. This is another one of those add-on capabilities where you can go out and you can look, and Adobe has a ton of free things. There are some that you actually can purchase as well. Third party have a lot of free things here for you to add in to Photoshop. So endless possibilities here. So really fun things. You can do anything from top bubbles to symbols to ornaments to nature shapes, and I have some of them here already. So let's say we want to have a dog. I click the dog and then I go out and I'm going to turn this back to a shape. Remember, I left it on pixels, so it was going to make a pixel layer. Needed an image layer to do that. Let's go ahead and do a shape. When I click and drag, you can make this be anything from a lab to a wiener dog, depending on how you stretch it. Now, if I hold shift down, it'll constrain the portions. So there's my shape that I've created, and endless possibilities like I mentioned. Now, another cool thing that you can do is take the type tool, and if I click, now people forget, we have typical fonts here that we can choose from, but we also have the wingdings. In the olden days, they were called dingbats. Now they're webdings or wingdings. I'm going to go down here to the bottom and find those. You can do this with anything, actually. So we have a lot of different, here's the actually Zap still has the dingbats available there. So I'll go to, let's just go to the wingdings regular. A lot of items there. When you start pressing on the keyboard, you'll find that there's a lot of different really fun symbols here for you to play with. Let's just say I want this letter. It was the letter K, but it's the ampersand, really fancy one that I want to use. I can take this now and I can go up to my type menu and I can convert this to a shape. And now look what happens. It's a K because that was the key that I pressed, but it's the webdings is what I was in. But now I have it as a shape. So I could do some really cool, fun things with that. And again, I can do any of those transformations, Command or Control T. I can hold down my Shift key to make this be much larger. So the fun thing here with all of these is now that I'll apply that transformation. Now that I have all of these symbols, I can do fun things like a clipping mask. So if I go back with my graphic, turn on, we'll turn off these. I can do my Alt or Option click in between. And look at that. I still have these other ones on, but I can do some fun things there. So I can do some really cool things. Let's undo this and let's go up to this one. We'll turn everything else off. And I'll do, sometimes what I like to do is actually take this and let's position this where I want it to be. So I'm going to use my move tool and move this down. And again, I can stretch this. I can do whatever I want. Let's just say I want to have this really fun design inside of that. And now I'm going to move this. Okay, this transformation. Let's move this underneath because remember the base layer has to be the mask layer. It's hard to position it correctly. So I sometimes move it to the top so I can see what it's going to do. And there it is. Now here's the cool thing. I can apply those effects to this. Let's go back and apply the drop shadow. So I can do a really cool drop shadow or whatever I want to this. I can again apply, say, that bevel and emboss. See how that looks as though it's three-dimensional now, and I'll just go with the defaults. You can play with those. So this is the way that you can incorporate working with shapes along with the clipping mask and some of those effects. A lot of really cool things to do.